Hey, welcome back to the Impact Driven Leader podcast. This is your host, Tyler Dickerhoff. So glad that you're joining in, whether you're listening on Spotify, Google Play, Apple Tunes, Stitcher, wherever you listen to podcasts, wherever it may be, or here watching on YouTube. Man, I'm so glad you're here. I'm excited today to share a conversation with one of my good friends, Dana Gentry. Dana and I have known each other for several years now. We met at a leadership conference where I attended with my wife and she with her soon-to-be husband, Adam. We look strikingly similar as a pair. I'll make sure to share a picture at some point here so you can see that of the four of us together. But we struck up a great friendship there, have continued to kind of connect with each other, ask leadership questions, share. She's invited me to participate and share within her Keller Williams world. And I'm glad for her to be a guest here and share with you today. We are packed full of notes. We have a lot of information to share with you. So get ready, get prepared. You're going to learn. I can guarantee you're going to leave this episode. You're going to learn. You're going to learn about what is unique about the one team that Dana and her organization are building. And it's really these three pieces. It's give value, be you, and work hard. And man, I love those. I love it. I absolutely love it. Now, before you get into the first episode, I want to say again, thank you for being here listening. If you're a subscriber, man, I appreciate that. If you've ever rated and reviewed, man, I appreciate that as well. And this is what I know is the opportunity for more people to hear from guests like Dana or our previous guests comes from how well we rate and subscribe, subscribers and raters, reviewers. That's proper, right? And so I encourage you to do that. Even if you've done it before, I'd love to know what you thought about this episode. I'd love to know what you thought about recent episodes, or if there's a conversation, if there's a piece. I asked this to our leadership roundtable group just last week. And we were talking about being in the fog. If you've ever read much Donald Miller, he talks about guiding people through the fog as, where's those next steps? I want to know. I'd love for you to send me an email, tyler@tylerdickerhoff.com. Send a message via wherever you can, social media, whatever. I'd love to know, what is the leadership fog that you're facing today? I'd love to find guests that can help us navigate through that. So again, thanks for being here today. Thanks for taking part. And I will say this right before we get into the episode. When I recorded this, I had a cold. Okay, I'll just put it bluntly, out of cold. Dana was getting over a cold. So there's going to be some times where, it's muted because I was sneezing or I was blowing my nose, and that is life. So I'm just warning you beforehand. Again, thanks for being here. And I'm going to see you at the end and kind of recap this episode.
All right, Dana, thank you so much for joining me. For those of you that are listening, I maybe mentioned this in the intro, but I am playing at less than 100%, and I am appreciative. Before you hear Dana, I just want to let you know if there's a little bit of mute, if there's a little bit of cough. She said that she had a little bit of something too. She is going to sound way better than I am, but Dana, thank you so much for being here joining me.
Oh my gosh, I don't know about that, but thank you for having me. I was super excited about this, and yeah, I don't know what's going around this allergenic cold thing, but we're going to just power through it.
That's right. Just, game players play, and right. We are going to play, and I'm excited to chat with you. So we got to know each other a couple years ago as I shared leading up to this in the intro. And when I was, looking through, it's like, whose different, unique voice can I hear? And it was yours. And I wanted to really just kind of have a leadership conversation with you. I would love for you to share kind of, first off, what is your leadership style or philosophy?
Yep. Love it. So when you asked me that, it actually, in the pre-questions, it was like the quickest thing to come to me, and I have a little bit of a backstory of it, but to answer first, it's three things. It's give value, be you, and work hard. And we have it on every t-shirt and on neon signs when you walk into our real estate offices, and they're on laptop stickers and they're on coffee mugs, and it's everywhere. And I reset that about a year ago. And funny story, I was working with one of my offices in Columbus, Ohio, and I had an agent who she's a great person and she has great ideas. And she was kind of just questioning if she should be with us or not. And she said something to me that I never forgot. And honestly, I spent the whole quarter of last year working on it. And she said, I just feel like I don't know what we stand for. And as soon as she said that, I mean, my first reaction was I wanted to be mad. And then I'm like, no, I'm going to point thumbs, not fingers, which is what great leaders do. And I'm like, okay, let me just think about this for a few days before I react. And Tyler, I thought, man, okay, from her perspective, we've got close to 700 agents, realtors in my organization. And like we're going to talk about today, it changes so quickly. Things change constantly all the time. There's crazy competition. And I thought, you know what? I'm the leader and I need to have a really good, not only vision, but philosophy. And people need to understand why they're with us and they need to know what we stand for. And so I did so much reflection and, had millions of coaching sessions and seminars and paid thousands of dollars to do all this stuff. And I thought, wait a minute, I'm like overcomplicating this. I just need to make it simple. And so I really felt like my whole life, if I give value, if I'm authentic to my true self and I be me, and I work hard, not only hardworking, in just the work life, but also work hard on yourself, like personal growth and being willing to work on yourself. Give value, be you, work hard. To me, it just sums it up. And that's how I lead. And I think there's a lot that you could talk about with all those three things. But for me, that's it.
Okay, so let's take a jump back and say, the Dana that, before you had, 700 agents, before you had offices in 4 different states now?
Yeah. 12 locations.
Yeah. 12 locations, 4 states. Before all of that, when Dana's just getting started in real estate, what was your leadership context at that point?
I don't even know if I had one. I had never led anybody. I don't even know that I did a good job leading myself, really, to be honest. I've always been a hard worker, and that's been it for me. Like, I just know that if I work hard and I build great relationships, I've always succeeded because of that. And so, I know one of the things we're going to talk about are the leadership elements that were key to me. And so I'll go deeper there. But for me, I think if I had one, I would say it was just being in great relationship and working hard. So kind of still the same things, because to me, the give value is constantly giving value to the people that are around you, which has a lot to do with building great relationships.
So if, from that and kind of understanding, it's like, okay, that starts to be effective.
Yeah.
And then come back to the scene that you painted for us when, an agent of yours, I'm like, I don't even know what this place is about. Right. and then to, boil it down and say, oh, well, that's what's really near and dear to me. So, all right, we have that concept. And for people listening in, how important is it for your role now as a leader to say, actually, the thing that I need to do every day is just go tell people what we're about?
Yeah, it's very important. And so I was thinking you'll appreciate this story. So right when the pandemic started to hit and we were like going in shutdown mode, I think it was like week 2. And I was a little bit, not panicked, but just like, man, okay, everybody's freaking out. People are thinking they're never going to make money again. They're scared to, leave their house. They can't touch the grocery cart or the gas pump, or like, are we going to die, or, what's happening? And our good friend, John Maxwell, started to do Facebook Lives called Leading in a Crisis. And it was interesting because I thought, oh my gosh, like, leave it to John. Okay, perfect. He's going to give us exactly what we need to do. He's going to tell us exactly what we need to do as a leader. And he said the best thing, and I keep telling this to people over and over, and I'll never forget it. One of the first things he said was, I want you to get out a pen and a piece of paper, and I want you to write down these 5 words. And so I'm like, ready. I'm thinking it's going to be like some great leadership like quote. And he said, here's the 5 words. I was born for this. And as soon as he said that, I was like, wait a minute. And so I wrote him down, and he said, here's the deal. If you are a leader today, and you're a person of faith, or if you're not, either way, it doesn't matter, but you just need to know that you were born for this. And so you are in the spot that you're supposed to be in. And so, Tyler, I took that to heart. And now it's so important for me to get up every day and tell our people what we stand for. And, I know I'm blessed to be able to lead them. They could choose any other leader that they wanted to. But for me, I want to let them know what we stand for and let them know what they're a part of and why it matters to them. Not just why it matters to me, but why it matters to them and to our community, more importantly. Because I feel like when you bear that responsibility of being a leader, you're in the spot that you were born to be in. And so I think you have responsibility with that to go and do the best job to deliver what you need to deliver to your people.
Man, I appreciate you saying that, because I think there's an element of so many people that are in leadership positions. You're like, whether you call it imposter syndrome, you're like, I don't know how to do this.
Yeah.
And understand you're there for a reason, and appreciate and accept that. Now, sometimes there's some of us, I'm not talking about you, but I'm talking about me. I had to sand off the edges in order that I could be a better leader.
Yeah.
And I think, to put that together doesn't mean I wasn't born for it. Doesn't mean you're or somebody else isn't born for it. But it's all those little, points. It's all the little roughness that holds us back from being able to recognize I was born for this.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, you just reminded me of one of my favorite quotes of all time, and it's by Craig Rochelle, who I think is one of the best leadership gurus ever. And he says, people would rather, you probably know this if you listen to his podcast, people would rather follow a leader that's real than a leader that's right. And I think I've lived by that since the first time I heard it. And I think sometimes when you're smoothing out or the edges or what you just said to me, I think nobody's perfect. And Gary Keller's always said there's no good, 2 good consecutive days as a leader, because you have one great day and you're like, man, like this was awesome. I crushed it today as a leader. And then the next day it's, a crap day or something happens and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm the worst leader ever. But I think about that because I just think even on those days or even in the hard times, people would rather follow a leader that's real than a leader that's right. And I think if they can see even some of the things that you struggle with or some of the edges that you need to soften out and all those things, to me, I mean, I would rather follow a leader that's like that, because I don't think anybody's going to get it perfect all the time. Especially not in the space that we're in.
So let's, kind of take from that, with that being held. And you've had a, pretty long experience, right? In real estate. So you've seen some ups and downs and arounds in different markets. How have you navigated through that as you've grown as a leader in telling the truth part? Yeah.
Well, so I recently met somebody that I have to connect you to, by the way. Like my goal, I knew when I was going to talk to you today that I was going to get to tell you about him, and maybe you already know him. But Ed Milet just had him on his podcast, and his name's Damon West.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like probably one of my new favorite people. I talked to him yesterday for an hour, and I'm like, okay, he's the best. But he said, he has a quote that he shares all the time, and I love it. And I wrote it down so I could tell you exactly word for word. He said, intentional positive impact in another human life is the greatest way to show gratitude for the blessings in yours. And I love that. Intentional positive impact in another human life is the greatest way to show gratitude for the blessings in yours. And so I really that resonated with me, because I looked at that and I thought, okay, when things do change, and we can talk about that in the real estate industry, but being just honest and truthful and being able to bring people value and help make an impact on them. And I know you love the word impact, and that was my word of the year this year. And so when I heard him say this, I'm like, man, it is true, because I don't take for granted the blessings that I've had, and I don't deserve a lot of them, to be honest.
Yeah.
But going out and making an intentional positive impact in a true, honest, and humble way with other people, I do think that that's the greatest way to show gratitude for the blessings that I've been given. And I think just continuing to model that for other people is important.
As I'm thinking about that, and I'm thinking about how that shows up, I'm thinking about being in your spot, and again, understanding where real estate's in my lifetime. Real estate has, this huge boom in 07, 08. We have this massive crash, and now all of a sudden we kind of come out of it, and now all of a sudden, where do we sit now? 2022, some of our real estate prices, residential real estate prices, are the highest they've ever been.
Yep.
And I think about someone that you're working with, right? And I think about the agents in your office or agents in others' office with the context of what you just shared.
Mm-hmm.
And I think about how different leaders can frame that. Meaning, am I making an intentional positive impact to say, hey, whatever happens in great times, you can add just as much value in bad market times, and vice versa. And so I want to kind of, give you that rope to run with and just say, what are you doing? What have you done? What have you done the last 2 years where you have agents that probably never made as much money as they've ever made?
Yep.
And what is that? How are you setting the stage for them to have that intentional positive impact going forward?
Love it. Great question. And I think I have a bajillion answers to that. But to sum it up, okay, the greatest thing about real estate is that we know that it's always going to be around. It's always the safest and best investment. Interest rates don't stop people from buying houses. They're going to buy them whether they're 2.5% or whether they're 18%. They always have. Statistics show that. I think today, I just finished right before this, I've been doing a monthly Zoom on the industry update, real estate industry update. Clients can hop on. It's mostly realtors that get on, not just for us, but for anybody who wants to, because I think they need perspective. Because if they're looking at just what they're reading on Facebook or Inman or, whatever news channel you watch or any of that stuff, you can believe, it's easy to believe whatever that is, but really perspective, Dave Ramsey teaches us, is really should be driven by data and experience and using the past as a predictor. So I try to really give them just data and make sure that they understand the perspective of things, because the reality is that there's always going to be the 5 Ds. Let me see if I can remember them of real estate. Diapers, people have kids. Diplomas, people graduate. They get into adulthood. I-dos, people get married. Divorces, people get divorced. And death, people die. So no matter what's happening in the industry, people always buy and sell homes. They always are going to want it to be a belly-to-belly relationship. Now, we have new competition coming in because everybody uses this for everything, their phone. And so I think we do, as real estate agents, run the risk of clients just using an iBuyer program or letting Zillow come in and, buy and sell their house and not use an agent and all those things. I don't think that will sustain. I think it's real and it can happen, but I think real estate is a relation to relationship. I mean, it's the largest asset that most people ever have in their life. And so I think that they always want it to be a belly-to-belly relationship-based business. So more than anything, I really just try to instill perspective, because it's always a good time to buy or sell real estate. And I was actually laughing. I was talking about this last night with somebody, because a lot of people think that in real estate you have to the only way to make money is to, buy when the market's really low and sell when the market's really high. And it's like this up and down roller coaster. When the real experts and wealth builders and investors know that it's more like it's a straight line. You buy and sell anytime. As long as you're willing to hold and continue out, the prices don't go down. I mean, there are some right now that are going a little bit. We just learned about the great migration because people are moving out of California, New York, Illinois, some of those states for tax purposes, political beliefs, health, but for the most part, the prices really haven't gone down. I mean, and we haven't had rates up. That's going in the weeds. But at the end of the day, it's giving our agents education, perspective, and teaching them how to build great relationships. Because if they just do those things, they're going to be fine. I mean, whether we're in the best or in the worst,
So as I take from that, and again, as I try to attribute that mentality to other industries that see ups and downs, right? You can get focused on the short term,
totally,
the volatility, but then lose sight of the long-term sustainability.
Yeah.
I've experienced that in agriculture. I've seen that in network marketing. I've seen that myself in real estate. And you have to get perspective and just say, hey, if it makes sense when it's bad, it's going to make sense when it's great, and vice versa. Yeah. And so, from a leadership perspective, you talk about doing that for potential clients. You talk about doing that for agents. Where do you see the opportunity, as we move forward? And a lot of times where we have people that are unsure of the career of a real estate agent or of buying and selling, to kind of say, hey, I'm here to be your guide. I'm here to support you, whether that's your individual position as a agency owner or if you're representing clients.
Yeah. I think people just want to work with somebody that they like, know, and trust. I mean, that's just in general. They want to be with a leader that they like, know, and trust. They want to work with a realtor that they like, know, and trust. They join network marketing because they like, know, and trust you. I think it all boils down to like, know, and trust. I do think, though, and I think this is true for a lot of industries right now, I think especially in real estate, people have to be willing to innovate and they have to be willing to change. And especially going into the next, 6 to 12 to 18 to 24 months, they really have to. There's so many factors in that. And there are factors that are affecting people in all industries, not just real estate, but technology is a huge one. I mean, people that aren't willing to adapt to technology. And I just had a Zoom about this today. If you aren't willing to get on video, you might as well just get out. I mean, there's so many changes now. And I actually thought of a story to tell you. I opened 2 years ago. We were going to open in Keller Williams, one of my offices in Ashland, Kentucky. It's in eastern Kentucky. It's a coal town, very small, but a lot of money there. And we went to look at space. I drove there for the day. It's about 2 hours from Lexington. Drove there for the day to look at space. And they had like 6 or 7, some of the agents that we were getting in business with, they had 6 or 7 lined up for us. And the first one that we pulled up to, I almost laughed at the beginning. It was this old brick building in a great location, like right on the main strip in Ashland, and it was a Blockbuster building. And it still had the Blockbuster sign up outside. And, we walk through, and I mean, there's cobwebs everywhere and bugs everywhere. It had sat there. It was way overpriced. So it had sat there for too long. But they still had like the coming soon. I'll never forget. It was like Big Mama's house was the poster on the wall. And they still had like some movies on the wall and like a candy stand. And I had like 2 or 3 really like strong feelings when we walked in. The first one was like nostalgic. I'm like, oh my gosh, remember when we used to like go rent a movie and we would pick out our candy and it was like a family thing or a date thing. And it was just like that cool feeling. And then my next thought was, but man, like how much do I love Netflix? And do I love that Netflix tells me what I want to watch before I even know what I want to watch, now, I mean, which really is true. And so I just kept thinking about that. And if anybody, I'm sure many of your listeners have listened to the Business Wars podcast of Blockbuster versus Netflix. But it's interesting to me to think about. I think a lot of times people, they're not willing to change or they're not willing to pivot because they're so stuck in their ways. And a lot of leaders, Tyler, are like that. I mean, a lot of leaders can get in that. And I don't know if it's that they're scared, to change or they don't know what to do, or what it is. But I think that that day really kind of changed me because I thought, man, like, I don't want to be the, bless you. I know I shouldn't have said that.
Yeah, I muted, but that's all right. If Dana saw it, you saw it on video. I just had the like massive sneeze. Again, I'm playing. I'm like you yesterday.
Yes, that was me yesterday. I think tomorrow is going to be better for you.
All right, let's do it.
Yeah, tomorrow's going to be better. But so the Blockbuster thing, that day I thought, man, like, I'm not going to be that leader. It's not going to happen. I mean, I have a responsibility. I was born for this. So I'm going to help our people as a leader in our industry understand that we have to be willing to change and we have to be open to do those things because I don't want us to be the next Blockbuster. And I actually was listening to a podcast by another person that we met through the John Maxwell Network, Pastor Daniel Floyd, and I think he's awesome. And he just did a podcast and he talked a little bit. He was talking about languishing, the Adam Grant article, which I think so many people are in right now. It's crazy. As a leader, I see so many people languishing. That's like a whole nother podcast episode we could talk about. But Daniel talked on his podcast about change and that the reason that people have such a hard time with it is because there is a sense of loss. So it was like just how when I walked into Blockbuster, I did have like that sense of loss, like, man, this was like cool. This was like the old times. But then at some point you have to be willing to give up that feeling of loss for something better. And I think he told this great story of he and his wife Tammy built this new house. And, they put a ton of money into it and they made it perfect and they just were so excited about it. And it was finally ready and their kids, there was their first night and their kids were like, we miss our old house, and they were like, what? Like, what's wrong with you? This house is amazing. We've got land, we've got a pool. Like we worked so hard for this, but it was that change that will be better, but the immediate loss is hard. And I think in our industry, especially that's happening right now, but I think leaders just have to be aware of that. And I think it can be a struggle.
The thought that strikes me there is the opportunity to, John Maxwell has taught us this. You and I have both been in the room when he said it's like, go to something.
Yeah.
Don't just leave to leave. It's go to something. And I think as a leader, there's so many people that have been challenged in leadership roles today. We see all these organizations that are in flux. We talk about where the economy is, and that's another change that people are uneasy with.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I really grasp a hold of is when we can go to something and when we can embrace that growth, man, we're going to appreciate it.
Yeah.
You know, and I hear from you, and again, circling back and reconnecting to the story you shared with, it's reminding people as a leader, reminding them, why are we here?
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to do the hard work. Like you said, I have to go qualify that and identify it because, I can get in the weeds so much. And I think, you know, as leaders in our world today, and again, everyone is dealing with higher priced food, living, you know, all of those costs than ever. That brings this anxiousness and tension to them where it's like, oh, well, maybe I have to go increase the value that I bring to the world so I can compensate for that. And that change is hard. And so as I give you that thought, like what thoughts come to you to say, you know what, as we move forward, and we know that transactions always ebb and flow in real estate, how are you helping your agent say, hey, I want you to bring more value at a time when, you know, there's more competition than ever?
Yeah.
So what are some of the things that you're going through?
Okay, so a couple things. One of the first thing that comes to my mind is a video that I think it's Jack Welch. It's a Jack Welch video on how to be a leader, or 3 things leaders should do. I can't remember. It's like a very famous Jack Welch YouTube video. It's just a couple minutes. But he says on there that all leaders must do 3 things. They have to tell people where they're going, why they're going there, and what's in it for them. And so I really try to live by that. I think that I have to constantly be helping people understand the agents in our offices and even our clients, because we still have a team that sells, but where are we going, why are we going there, and what's in it for them. And then I think once they understand that, the change can be easier for them. But I do think it comes back to a couple of key elements in a leadership style. And I mean, I have 3 that I would love to share, if that's okay with you, that really. Okay, perfect. That I think these have just always been the ones that I've kind of lived by. And I think the first one is be intentional, and that's period. And I've never learned that better from anybody than from John Maxwell. But they have to be intentional. I think that once they know their why, Tyler, and they know why they're doing it, they know what their goals are, they know, you know, why they're going to continue to do, even if it's not real estate, whatever it is that they're doing. They have to be intentional. After they know the why, they have to be intentional. One of my favorite quotes is bloom where you're planted. I think they have to be intentional with what they're doing every day, whether they're, you know, someone that's working at a front desk, or you are leading a small team, or you're leading an organization of thousands of people. You have to bloom where you're planted, and or be so good that, you know, other people can't ignore you. And I believe personally that because I'm a person of faith, and I know you are as well, but you have to be intentional with, for me, 3 things: your time, your talent, and your treasures. And I read a book, Chase the Lion, by Mark Batterson.
Yeah.
And I mean,
it's a great book.
Changed my life, honestly. One of the best. I buy it for everybody that I ever come in contact with. And have you had him on your podcast?
No.
We haven't either.
That'd be fun.
We need to make that. I know he's been one we've had on our list. We'll have to make that happen. But I believe that when you are intentional with your time, your talent, and your treasures, and I tell our agents this all the time, then everything else kind of can fall into place. But first and foremost, they have to be intentional. And even more so when you're going through a change, like your industry is changing, or our world's changing, or all those things. You have to be intentional with where you spend your time, know your strengths, and you have to be intentional with that for sure. And then your treasures. The second thing I would say to them, and I say this all the time, are relationships matter. And we kind of touched on this earlier, you know, but I've been blessed, and you have too, to be in a room with a lot of, my dog is going to distract me. Been blessed to be in a room with a lot of amazing people. And I believe no matter what business you're in, especially in the real estate industry, who you're around, I mean, it matters big time. The relationships that you build matter. This is a funny story, but when I was in school, I worked at a tanning salon, and I can't tell you, Tyler, to this day, hundreds is really the answer, how many homes I've sold to people who came into that tanning salon. Because I built great relationships with them when I was, 17, 18 years old. And then as soon as I got my license and started selling, I would send them postcards or, call them and just let them know if they knew anybody looking to buy or sell. And I mean, hundreds. And that was 18 years ago, and maybe 19 years ago, and longer than that, actually. And still to the 20. Oh my gosh. Okay. I'm adding up the years. And it was still to this day. I mean, we do business with people that I met there. because to me, it's about, I mean, I build relationships with people. I think that that's just one of the best things that you can do. And that's advice I would give to anybody that's in any business, but especially real estate agents, because that's their bread and butter. I mean, you know what I mean? That's it, building relationships with people. And then the third thing, and this is probably one of my most passionate, but I've been telling them this too, and really any leader, is you have to just run your race. And I think, again, we could talk so much about this, but I truly believe that the fastest way to kill or destroy something special is to compare it to something else. And I think it's human nature to compare. I think social media heightens it like times 100, now. But I really believe, I heard this a long time ago, and I don't remember, it might have been Andy Stanley. I can't remember who said this, but they said, comparison makes you feel two ways, either superior or inferior, and neither one honors God. And when I heard that, I was like, man, that's true. Like, why even compare? I mean, run your own race, because I don't want to feel either one of those ways. And one of my favorite Bible verses is Hebrews, I wrote it down, 12, 1-2, yes, which is all about looking forward. The quickest way to lose a race is to look over your shoulder behind you. So always look forward. And Tyler, every time I hear that, and I think about this, and I even have this in one of my classes that I teach when I speak, is that picture of Michael Phelps when he's competing to run. You know what I'm talking about?
That's what image is going through my mind. Yeah, I'm with you.
See, yes, and it's like Chad, what's his face, is the guy that he's racing against, and it's when he's racing to win the 10th gold medal, which would make him the winningest Olympian of all time. And Phelps is like straight ahead, and Chad is looking right over at Phelps and loses by one stroke. And I'm like, what better image to just like constantly have in your head of run your own race. I mean, money is I always say, like, if you do good to the world, like you can't chase the money. I mean, like the money's going to come to you. It just is. But I really feel like, especially real estate agents are so bad about this. Oh my gosh, they pull everybody's sales and see what number ranking they are. And, they're like, oh, I dropped this month, or, oh, I'm beating so-and-so, or like constantly looking what everybody else is doing. And I used to be that way. I mean, I did. I really believe that it's not healthy. Mm-hmm. I don't know another way to say it, but I think you have to run your own race. Because really I can't run someone else's race and they can't run mine. I mean, I can't run yours and you can't run mine, and I can't run whoever's and you can't run whoever's, but we can run ours. And I'm passionate about that. And I think as a leader, more leaders need to share that message with their people, because comparison is real.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, so I want to throw something in there. Every Monday through Friday, typically in our business group, I do a Facebook Live. I've done this for a couple of years now, which has been tremendous training for, platforms such as this or speaking. Yeah. And I come up with a thought of the day that comes from my daily reading, and I share that on social media. I share that in videos. And the one that I had about a week or so ago came from that reading time. And I don't know exactly which one of the books formulated it, but I came up with this: is you'll always win the race that you're running for you. Mm-hmm. You'll never finish second in your own race if you run your own race. We finish second when we're trying to run someone else's race. And that image of Michael Phelps. And what's interesting is I help coach my son's soccer team. And as we've been doing running and conditioning, there's times where it's competitiveness. And I've seen a couple kids, and they stop and they turn to look at other players. And so that image of Michael Phelps the last week or two has been seared in my brain. Yeah. And our young encouragement to them is just run theirs. Yeah. Last night, a young boy, he was running, and I say young, he's 14, 15. And, he's looking behind him to see if the guy behind him is going to catch him. I'm like, stop, just run your own. And he ended up beating the kids by another 5 yards because he had more in the tank. He didn't realize it. And I think what's interesting is I relate this back to our conversation, how so much of where we get disenfranchised in our career or what we're doing is when we stop focusing on the first two and we allow our race to become someone else's. Totally. So maybe we focus on being intentional and we develop relationships, but we're so fixated on, I got to be better than someone else, that I forget to just focus on those other two. And if I focus on those two, whatever race I'm running, excuse me, it may have ups and downs.
I I love when this happens because I wasn't going to share this with you, but now that I have this quote that's laminated, that I actually have it stuck up on my desk, and I love it. I've had it forever, and it just reminds me of what we're talking about. And it's by Vesta Kelly, and I have no clue who Vesta. I don't even know who that is. Do you?
No clue.
Oh,
Never
okay.
heard of it.
However, I read it in a book, and this is what it says. Snowflakes are one of nature's most fragile things, but just look at what they can do when they stick together. Think of what believers could do if we partnered together. Instead of being jealous, territorial, or easily threatened, what if we became dangerously generous with our resources, ideas, and organizations? And people ask me all the time, like, why do you do all these free Zooms? Why do you share all this stuff? Why do you give information away and let people that aren't with Keller Williams to be on there? This is why. I mean, I just don't think like that. I mean, I think exactly what you just said too. I think if we can just come together, and I'm not worried about I know what I'm doing, whether anybody else is doing it or not. And I think sometimes we think to scarcity mindset like that as leaders, we can. And I've been guilty of that before too. I don't want anybody that's listening to this to think that I'm not like that, because I have been. But I think that's a dangerous mindset to get into. And I think it turns very me-centered instead of others-centered. And I just think the more that you can, like, I love when she says that, like, be dangerously generous with your resources, ideas, and your organization. Because I don't know anybody that gets up and shares all their stuff that isn't successful. I mean, really, if you think about it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's, as I'm sitting here and I'm thinking about Gary Vee. Gary Vee has been, very much like that. And I think he is pertinent in our society for a couple ways. And, this comes back to a thought that I had, again, in real estate, as within network marketing, as with a lot of other businesses, you see a lot of people that want to tout whatever they've gained, their big house, their cars, their, fancy this or that. And I'm like, I'm not shaming people. If that's who they are, then fine. But if you're using that to say that's what's going to justify my value, what I have to bring to others, man, you're worth so much more. Totally. And, show people with what comes out of your heart and your mind rather than what possessions you have. And I think, as I try to relate that to, yourself, and you're leading others. You are a prime example of this. You're not a showy person. You are who you are. Yes, you like things, but it's more of getting back to what you said earlier. Am I adding value to people? Yeah. Am I being you? And are you just working hard? If you focus on that, man, the rest of that stuff that you have or don't have isn't going to matter. Yeah, because it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, and I really believe. I think it was Joe Polish who said this that I listened to. I've heard this years ago. He said, "Life gives to the giver and takes from the taker," and I believe that. I mean, I believe that just as a human, but especially as a leader. I really believe that life gives to the giver and takes from the taker. And I think people, when you're looking at leadership in particular, and in any field, again, I think you have to be a giver. I think life gives back to you when you are.
I don't want to take anything away from that. And from that, I want to add in, as a leader in real estate, as a leader within Keller Williams, as one of the top leaders, as someone who has, a lot of influence. You have, 700 different agents, different offices, all those different things. What's your main directive and why?
Good question. I just want to add value to people. And honestly, I think all I've ever known is real estate. I've done it for 18 years. I was a sophomore in the University of Kentucky. I never finished college. I don't have a college degree. I got my real estate license the summer between sophomore and junior year, and I started selling houses, and I was successful, and I never went back. I think before, to be totally transparent, I've struggled before with feeling like even just being in the real estate industry, maybe wasn't as, a lot of people see it as like used car salesman or just another salesperson or whatever. And so to me, I'm not that type of person. So I've always had to make it something different than that. And I think that's why I got into leadership. Selling was what led me there. But I just want to help people think bigger and bring them value, because, I didn't come from a family that, we had a ton of money, or that I was challenged to think this big life and think abundantly. And not that my parents weren't great. They are, you know what I mean? I'm not saying anything negative about my parents. But I didn't even like school. You know what I mean? I don't know. And so I think as I've moved into adulthood and doing all of this, I just want to bring value to people, and I want them to see that there are bigger things. And actually, I had something I was going to ask if you would allow me to read it.
Yeah.
This kind of goes right with it, because this is my definition of success. I stole it from Dan Sullivan, who is a top entrepreneur leadership coach, and he wrote the book Who Not How, which is one of my favorite books. And he says that this is the 10 ways that you're successful when. And I just think they're so good. And so this ties in with your question, I promise, because I just want to help people think like this and know that it's possible. Number 1 is I can wake up every day and ask, what would I like to do today? Number 2 is my passive revenue exceeds my lifestyle needs. Number 3, I can live anywhere in the world that I want, which that was a huge one for me over the last couple of years, because my businesses are all in Kentucky, Indiana, and Ohio, and my family and Adam are in South Carolina. So I was really struggling with that. Number 4, I'm working on projects that excite me and they allow me to do my best work. Number 5, I can disappear for several months with no effect on my income. Number 6, this is my favorite, there are no whiny people in my life. Number 7, I wear my watch for curiosity only. Number 8, I have no time obligations or deadlines. Number 9, I wear whatever I want all the time. And number 10, I can quit at any time. And nobody, Tyler, ever told me any of those things. I think that we're raised to think that we go to school, we educate, and then we go to work, and then we retire. And I think after listening to a lot of great mentors and having really great coaches, like, I want to live, work, play, like, all the time. It doesn't have to be in those stages. And I think for me, I want to help people understand that, whether it's the agents, whether it's clients, whether it's people that do who knows what, that aren't even in real estate, but they stumble upon our podcast, or, they, I don't know, find you on social media, whatever it is. I think a lot of people, when you don't know what you don't know, you aren't exposed to some of those things. And I've just been very blessed to have been exposed. And so I want to pay it forward and help as many people as I can. That's a long answer to a really short question.
But I think it really gives definition, and it encapsulates, to me, the epitome of a leader who's saying today, is like, whatever challenges come before us, that's fine.
Yeah.
You're not going to just jump when I say jump. We're in this together. How can I impart something on your life? Because whatever you're doing to contribute to whatever organization we're in, you're imparting something on mine. And I think having that relationship and that ownership, I believe, is what more people, when I talk to people, when I talk to leaders and organizations that are fired up and say, we don't have we don't have a hiring problem. We have the people that are great. Why? Because they're creating an environment where they have that vision. They're saying, this is what we're about. They are being true in who they are. Man, they don't have those issues. Yeah. But what I find is the leaders that are, they're unsure, they lack their own belief, they're a little bit cautious. Maybe they've checked out because they're off doing their other things, and they're allowing their organization to just flounder. And saying, well, you know what, it's run its course. I'll just, reap off of this and go do the next thing. To me, those are organizations that end up having this amazing internal upheaval. Yeah. And that's that languishing, this idea of what does it look like to change that?
Yeah, you're spot on.
And I think what you have said that you've committed to, and I wonder now when this point was to say, no, I want to do it different.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you when it was, and you'll remember, we were sitting on a bus, and I was talking, me and you and Simon were talking, and if you remember, I was getting hit with some major competition. I mean, major competition coming in, taking our people, writing people checks for a lot of money, a lot. And so I've been there, and that was, a year ago, I guess, or almost a year ago. And I really had to do some self-discovery. Like, am I gonna like pull up my boots and really get into this, or do I have the energy to, or cause I have several businesses and I'm like, okay, do I need to like just not focus on that? And sometimes I think like everybody's going to hit that. I think there's parts in your business, times in your business, there's different seasons. And I think sometimes when we get in what is it? There's like 4 different seasons, but one of them is like when the getting's good and you think like, man, like we're good and this is going to last forever. It doesn't last forever.
Nope.
You have to know what's working good to continue to work good. And we were good, but we didn't know why. And so I think that at that moment, it did for me. It took some competition coming in, and I was like, what in the world? And then I felt comforted to like hear that Simon had been there and you had been there and other people had been there. And I think if there are leaders that are listening that are there, maybe even right now, like reach out to other people and talk to them and see what other people have done. And, I like to, I don't come up with all these ideas. I'm going to tell you right now, half the stuff we do in our offices, I steal from Stephen Chandler at Union Church because I'm like, the media that they produce is insane. And we model a lot of our stuff from mega churches because it's similar and, it's not in the same industry. But I've been there and it's not a good feeling. But you have to commit to know that you are the type of leader that's going to push through it. I mean, you learn so much from it. I've learned so much from that time and being in with the long haul, like even some people that left, like they've already come back and it's been a year because I don't know. I think some people are very shiny object, like they see a carrot.
Every business.
Yeah. And they're like, I'm on it. But I also take a lot of like pointing the thumbs again. And I didn't have a clear set vision. I don't think that they could have known that we were there to make an impact in the community and in the lives of our agents and that was our most important thing. And we put together impact projects since then and community groups and so many things that I think I took for granted because we were good. We were number one, everything, you know what I mean? And so it was just like we were rolling smooth, but that just doesn't last forever. And there's always going to be a time where something's going to happen and you just have to recommit to it and then do the work. I mean, we've done the work and it's been hard, but we've done it.
So there's a part of me that it's like, I'll just ask you this off camera. We'll chat about this, text about it. Kelly and I were talking about this last night, but then there's also like, no, there's probably going to be a ton of value out of this. So Kelly and I had this discussion, teed up, Kelly, my wife, and talking about at what point, let me take this back. I will frame it in as a question to you instead of laying the groundwork.
Okay.
How have you, 12 different offices, how have you empowered the leaders within those offices to embrace what you're about and not be about Dana? Understanding if you're not showing up as a leader, then all of a sudden your vision and that collective vision can get lost. So what are you doing to balance that?
Great question. And I've had a lot of coaching around that because, it's interesting. And I say this like not with any ego or whatsoever. And people that know my heart know that that's not how I am at all. But when I come into town and visit the offices, like everybody's at the meet, everybody shows up and everybody's there. And when I teach a class, like everybody is there. And so for a while we struggled with like, when I wasn't there, how was the energy? And so I love your question because I've worked on this for probably, 4 years, very, very hard now. And it's all about the people. I remember the first time that I stopped showing buyers houses. Like I just went to focusing on selling listings only. And I thought there's no way. These buyers only want to work with me. They only want me to show them these houses. They're going to be upset if I tee them off to somebody else. And the reality is that when you find the right person who's better than me, honestly, like now I have Sarah on, I've had several, but Sarah, just for example, today, she's faster at responding. She's quicker. She's out there every single day where I'm not she delivers the same level of service and energy that I do, even better. And so they're okay with it. They could care. They invite her to their kids' birthday parties instead of me now, and I think that's awesome. But I think when you're talking about all these different locations, it just comes back to the people. And I asked John Maxwell that when we were at Exchange probably 2 years ago. I was struggling with finding people. I can definitely be a workaholic, for sure.
Oh, really?
Not a surprise to those who know me, but I like to work. I genuinely like to work. I like to be busy. I like to innovate. I'm a visionary. I love all that stuff. And so I have to be careful with that sometimes because I could do it all the time. But I was talking to John and I said, I feel like I had a conversation with Gary Keller, long story short, and I'll circle back, but I'd had a conversation with Linda McKissick, one of my mentors who you know, and Gary Keller. And Linda said, I feel like as a leader and as a driver, I walk around like pissed off all the time. And I just feel like I'm never happy, or like I can't, I'm annoyed constantly. And Gary looked right at her, and I was right there. Gary looked right at her and he said, Linda, he said, it's because you're an achiever. And he said, your capacity is so high that your minimum capacity is the normal average person's maximum capacity. So he said, you have people in your life that they don't have the same capacity as you have. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's me. Everybody, not everybody, but a lot of the people I had surrounded myself with, like, not that they were bad people, I just have a really high capacity. And so people that are going to work with me or be in my world, they have to have a high capacity too, or we're going to have an issue. And I was having people that they were maxed out at what I felt like was my low capacity. And so in order to be able to we're not perfect in all the offices either. I'm looking for talent all the time. But for me, it's finding those people, Tyler, and just having them be bought into the vision. They're bought in. They understand why we're doing this. They have a servant's heart. They're humble, hungry, and smart. Those are the main three things I look for in people. If they aren't humble, and by hungry meaning working and smart, I don't mean like what was your IQ. I mean your EQ.
Yeah.
If you can be people smart, forget it. But it's finding those people and then having them bought in so that other people they carry out the Dana energy, when I'm not there, and they're bought in. And I think that is really the only way to do it. I mean, it's just finding those talented people that have high capacity.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's really a two-edged, because it's like you have to have enough. But then, I think one of the things that Kelly and I have experienced and realized is at what point do you still need to be a visible visionary leading that vision and not, step back too far to where then people get lost. I think that's a balance as a leader in to find that spot. And I think that's what has challenged a lot of different workplaces the last couple of years is the only way to have that proximity is to be in an office with someone. But that can be done, as so many people have proved, in a remote office sense, but you have to be intentional. And that comes back to one of the first things that you said is being intentional about it.
I hate to say this and sound insensitive because I know the pandemic was so horrible for so many people. For me, it was such a blessing, honestly, because I got to learn a new way of doing things. And I had Zoomed a few times, but 50%, if not more, of my day is Zoom now. And it allowed me to physically be in another state and still be in communication. Now, I think that you have, person to person, there's nothing like it. I want to say one thing, though, to go back to your question of you and Kelly talking about that. I think it depends on, too, like the seasonality of where your business is, because there are times like during the pandemic, I needed to be more engaged with our people. Like they needed to hear from me. They needed to see me. I wrote so many handwritten notes. I can't even hundreds of them. I wrote 10 every day because I just wanted them to know I cared about them in little ways. I think sometimes there are some seasons when you can pull back. For me right now in my life, I found that I need to be face-to-face once a month. And then the rest, typically, like the other leaders can handle it, or I can be virtual and on Zoom. And I think it's going to change. I think that's because we've been in such a crazy market. It's just been nuts. But I think you have to know your business and your people well enough to know like when you need to be more present versus when you can not be, but still be available to them too. Yeah.
Dana, thanks so much for coming and joining today.
Oh my gosh.
And giving it. I'm glad I sounded as bad as I did because you sounded absolutely amazing without anything to do with how I sound. So I appreciate you being here, playing at 100%, being such a wonderful guest and sharing so much wisdom. I have probably, and this isn't to take anything away from the guests that I've had before, but probably more notes than I've ever had. So I appreciate that. I hope listeners too. Thank you so much.
Oh my gosh, thanks for having me. I just love everything you guys do, and I love your podcast and all the people that you've interviewed. And actually, really quick, you have made huge impact on me, Tyler, and I just want to recognize you for that. And when you had Paula Ferris on, and from called out, I mean, I quit a job that week from listening to that. So another job that I had. And so I think you are making, I know you are making a huge impact. And I love watching what you're doing, and thanks for letting me be a part of it. It was great.
Oh, thanks so much, Dana. I appreciate you being here.
Absolutely.
Hopefully you are like me and, you're able to take notes during the conversation I had with Dana. She dropped a lot of pearls of wisdom, many pearls of wisdom. I have pages of notes. And one of the things as I'm reflecting back, as I'm sharing with you here, is the 3 pieces that she left with. And that's be intentional. Bloom wherever you're planted is what I wrote down beside it. Relationships matter. I'm excited to have a future guest where we're going to dig deep into talk about relationships, unpack this even more, because I think in leadership, it is an absolute necessity to focus and develop relationships. It's one of the areas that I believe an impact-driven leader focuses on: relational, emotional, spiritual, and physical. Those are the 4 areas of health. Relations, one of them. And then lastly, run your race. I love that one. I shared this recently. I talked about it in the episode with Dana about you will never finish second when you run your own race. You'll only finish second if you're running someone else's race. I hope you keep that in mind. Again, thanks for being here. Here's what you could do for me, for Dana, for anyone else. If you got value out of today's episode, share it with someone. Just kind of put a little note, send it via text, send it via email, whatever it may be, and just share this with them. Say, hey, I really learned this. Man, this really helped me reflect. This reminded me of that instance where I learned. When we learn, when we share, we grow. And that's my hope, that you're a part of this community to grow, as I know growth is a facet of being an impact-driven leader. And I thank you for being a part of the community and helping me grow, because that's the accountability and the community comes from. Thanks again for being here. And until next time, have a good one.